getting to here. And let me give you a couple of real-life examples from a marketing perspective. Harley Davidson. Those of you that have been around a Harley or know Harley's culture, is a Harley Davidson motorcycle cheaper than Hondas and V-Stars? No, they're more expensive, right? Do they get better fuel economy? No. At the lower maintenance? No. If you looked at all the justification and reasons why you would buy a Harley versus anything else, you'd never buy a Harley. If it was just strictly based upon the motorcycle. But why do people buy it? Because they feel it's American made. You're a patriot. You're supporting red, white, and blue. That is why they buy Harley Davidson. So let me challenge you a little farther. Let's go back to 2016, June of 2016. A very good friend of mine, I'm going to take politics out of this, a very good friend of mine that is on the other side of the aisle. We were having a discussion at that time about the Republican candidates for president. Memory serves, I believe there was 18. His name was Michael Andreotti. I said, Michael, I can tell you who's going to win. And I said, I would put money on it. I said, Donald Trump's going to win. Now, don't throw rocks at me. He goes, why is that? I said, because you know what? He's got the why. Whether you agreed with him or not, but he had a statement that said, I'm going to make America great again. That is why I'm running. I'm going to make America great again. All the rest of them, all they talked about was what they were going to do. And you know what? It didn't resonate. So I challenge you to think about this as you go later in life in your career, whether it's in the business world or whatever it may be, to utilize why you're doing something and why you're committed to helping your client or that relationship. That will pay dividends. Okay. Final lesson learned. Competition. We compete every day. Who do you compete against? And who should you compete against? I will tell you today, you really only have one competitor that you should be focusing on. Just one. And it's you when you look in the mirror. I grew up in this little town in South Dakota, and this is where I learned this. There was a young lady who had cerebral palsy. Had an enthusiasm for life, and she had an enthusiasm to compete, although she could not physically. In fact, they had bike races. I had a bike race in our community every year. And she would train to compete and win that bike race. But she didn't have the equipment because she didn't have the balance. She had to have a three-wheel bike. So you know, how do you win a bike race, 3 wheels against 2? Virtually impossible. In fact, it wasn't possible. But she competed. But more importantly, here's what happened. Here's what we learned. She got on that bike and took off. It was an instant the pack left her. But when the winners got done, and everybody else got done, guess what they did? They got back on their bikes and rode with her to the finish line. Now we could tell you a story about perseverance and rising above and achieving, but that's not the message. The message is she competed against herself to do better every year. And the message to you is this. You got to compete against yourself. Because if you set the standard, if this is your competitor, and this is you, you won, right? But here's what happens. What we forget about, and in this business world where new business models are being built, what you don't realize is there's somebody else. If you just focus here, there's somebody else that's over here that will outdistance you and replace you. So if you focus on yourself, every day, every month, every year, you say, I am going to be better. You don't have to worry about this competitor. And in fact, when you get out and you work in the business world, and you even share that with a client, if they ask who's your competition, it's me. Because my commitment to you, Mr. Customer, is that I'm going to be a better supplier, better vendor, better relationship, provide better service tomorrow than I did today. And the next day better than that. And here's what happens. That customer now, just like they did with that young girl from Freeman, they come back in and get behind you, and they ride with you, and they'll support you. So that's why your competitor is not these, it's you. And if you focus on how you can get better, ask questions, never stop learning, teamwork, you will win. So, what was the assignment? How many squares do we have up here? 16, right? The obvious answer is 16. There's some more?
No, 18. 21.
18? How many see more than 24? All right, let me give you the examples. So naturally we do have 16 here, right? Obviously. But we actually have one around the outside if we have a large, the big one, around this perimeter. We have one in the middle. That's 18. Don't we also have 4 if we go by 2s? That's another 4, right? If we inset, we can do 2s here. It's another 4, right? How about if we go in 3s? We could go 3 here and offset and overlap. It's another 4. Should have 30. The reason I share that with you is this. In life, there's going to be obvious solutions. There's going to be very obvious thoughts and suggestions. What I would challenge you guys is to think about the second right answer. What lies behind that? What is not always obvious? And hopefully today, what I've done is just a little bit, is expanded your mind a little bit, no different than I did here, is to challenge you to think differently. And share just a few thoughts about what I did, what I didn't do, and what I learned. So, I got about 20 minutes for questions, so this floor is wide open. So please, it could be state issues, it could be whatever. I'm happy to answer some questions. Is that right? About 20 minutes, Dean? Fire away. In the back.
What is your opinion on the current state of South Dakota Trust Company?
Thank you for the question. Many times I ask questions when I get into rooms like this, and I didn't today, but can somebody tell me which state and union has the most banking assets? You want to take a guess? South Dakota. I usually get answers like California and New York and Illinois. South Dakota has more banking assets than any other state and union. And it's because of the trust assets that we have embedded in South Dakota. And we also have 2 very large banks that have their charters here, as well as many other ones. So I'm very pro-trust. People, it's one of these unsung market sectors that people don't know as much about that is really a big economic driver in the state of South Dakota. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, sir.
Fire away. You guys are going to be easy on me. Any other ones? Top crowd.
Commissioner Stern, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good to hear you.
What a fascinating lecture. Since you didn't ask questions, I'm going to ask some questions to see whether you listen to everything Commissioner Stern said. He used the number 218. What is that? somewhere in his lecture, he used the number 218. Anybody know what the 218 is? These are random thoughts that you listen.
His position on the society.
His position, perfect answer, tribologist and lubrication engineer. What is the difference between lithium hydroxide and calcium carbonate? Anybody?
He didn't answer that.
He didn't answer that. Yes, good, good comment. He used the number 211. What is that?
Number before boiling.
Number before the boiling point. Excellent. And he drove a point home about Stacey King and Michael Jordan. What is that about?
Teamwork.
Teamwork. Fantastic. He talked about Holly Davidson. What was his message to us about Holly Davidson?
Table wise, if you flatten
Perfect. Wow. I'm very, very impressed. And he told us something about competition. What is it about competition?
Compete against yourself.
Competing against yourself. Fantastic. Commissioner Stern,
Oh, well, thank you.
we all learned so much from you.
Oh, well.
Thank you very much.
I'm very humbled. It's great to be here. It truly is. Thank you very much.